Hello Internet, it's me Josh, the Aging Gamer. So, something you'll hear me say quite often on this channel is, man, I really loved that as a kid. Well, today's no different. I'm talking about one of my favorite cartoons from my childhood. I'm talking about Tiny Toon Adventures.
Premiering in 1990, this cartoon, produced by Steven Spielberg, stars a gigantic cast of characters. Most were based off already established Looney Tune characters, but all of them absolutely had their own personalities. Buster Bunny and Babs Bunny, no relation, were the two main characters, but it also has Plucky Duck, Hampton J. Pig, Shirley the Loon, Dizzy Devil, Furball, Sweetie Pie, Calamity Coyote, Little Beeper, Fifi LaFume, Little Sneezer, Elmira Duff, Go-Go Dodo, and Montana Max, as well as a bunch of other side characters. The show consisted of comedy sketches, lots of slapstick, celebrity impersonations, and so much fourth wall breaking it would make Deadpool blush. The show overall was a massive hit, with lots of merchandise, clothing, cereal, Happy Meal toys, and of course video games, created to please the young kids of the early 90s. But despite the series' success, production ended in 1992 to make way for Spielberg's next big cartoon, Animaniacs, to release the next year. Like I already mentioned, Tiny Toons was a favorite of mine. This show was funny, had great animation and ideas, and it was one of the earliest cartoons I remember watching that made me want to consider getting into voice acting or animation, even though I was only like 6 years old.
And man, there's a lot of Tiny Toon Adventure games out there, but I was debating which one I should do, so for something a little bit different, why not do a bunch of them? Between 1991 and 1994, the heyday of Tiny Toon's popularity, Konami, in their prime, had the license to make Tiny Toon Adventure games. So those are the games I want to look at. These Tiny Toon games seem to be remembered pretty fondly and regarded as, for the most part, as great games from the 90s. Well, let's see how they hold up today. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tiny Toon Adventures for the NES, Super Nintendo, Game Boy, and Sega Genesis. So the first game we'll be looking at is the first real Tiny Toons video game ever created, if you don't count the Tiger's Electronic game. This is Tiny Toon Adventures for the NES.
So the story starts with Buster Bunny lounging around when suddenly Montana Max appears on TV, Shredder style, and he says he's captured Babs Bunny. There's no real reason though, he just kinda captured her for the hell of it. What's his motivation here? Well, let's go save her. You'll play as Buster Bunny. You can jump around, slide, and defeat enemies by jumping on their heads. But that's not all. Before you start each level, you'll be able to pick a partner of your choice. Find this star item to change. There's Plucky Duck, who can flutter down slowly after jumping, Furball, who can climb on walls, and there's Dizzy Devil, who can do a short but strong spin attack. Use your abilities to go through a variety of worlds on your adventure to save Babs. The game mechanics itself are actually really solid. The character movements are so smooth. But in just recent news, it was discovered that when Konami was developing this title, they might have actually used reverse engineering and used Super Mario Bros. 3 code here. Buster and Mario both jump, slide, run, and even have the 3 different running speeds that function exactly the same. But while they might have the same mechanics, something that really keeps them apart is the level structures. So the first few levels are decent, but soon afterwards you'll see how annoying enemy placements and hazards can really be. Like, look at this level for example. I'm in the city and I run into a garbage can. Logic says to jump over it and oof, I'm dead. Let's try this again. This time I'll jump over the garbage can and do my best to stay off the ground. I'm dead again. Let's try this one more time. Maybe I'll slow down a bit. I'll jump over the first garbage can and just do a little jump so I don't hit that dog in the window, and damn it, I'm dead again! This underwater level is quite annoying too. There's so many damn enemies. I can shoot this little underwater tornado, but it only kills certain bad guys. So when I get to sections like this, it's hard as hell to pass. Damn! Then there's some really cheap stuff, like this pirate ship level. I'm doing good and avoiding enemies and all that when all of a sudden, what? What happened? What killed me? I thought maybe this enemy hit me, but I died before its weapon even touched me. I go through again and Oh, the goddamn barrel killed me. I thought these were part of the level platforms. What a cheap hit. Almost as cheap as this level where you have to ascend by jumping platform to platform and boom, out of nowhere, you're dead. Isn't Sweetie Pie a Tiny Toon? Why is she a bad guy? And also completely random, there's a fight with Donkey Kong where he just drops a baby monkey on you. God damn. I remember liking this game as a kid, but I don't remember it having such a trial and error gameplay. But one thing I didn't know until replaying it now is that there's a secret boss fight. Collect exactly 11 carrots and beat a boss and you'll see a spaceship on the map. You'll then have a boss battle with Duck Vader. You get 3 extra lives if you beat him. It's so random, but it's so neat at the same time. Overall, this game has its fun moments, but it has so much potential to be better than it is. I just feel like it's hindered by poor level designs. It's not garbage or would I even consider it bad, but yeah, it just feels like it could have been structured better. Oh, and for that ending, after you beat Montana Max, Buster, what are you doing to him? The Tiny Toons celebrate, but you still have no idea what Max's motives to kidnapping Babs was.
So that was the first game. How did the follow-up do? Well, let's take a look at Tiny Toon Adventures 2, Trouble in Wacky Land.
So in this game, an amusement park opens and all the Tiny Toons are invited to the park by some mysterious stranger. It's of course Montana Max, and he's rigged all the rides with killer traps.
Jesus, what's this kid's problem? I guess having too much money really can go to your head.
So you select any ride you want, except for the castle in the middle. That's only unlocked after beating the other 4 rides. So let's start with the log ride. We take control of Furball, and the main point is to just try and stay on the log without falling off. It's got some challenge, but it doesn't get too difficult until you get towards the end and have to control this crane. It's not enough that you have to dodge these ridiculously sized spikes, but you get Sweetie Birds flying by too. Jeez! But get through it and a whale will eat you. Next we play as Plucky in the bumper car ride. I'll be honest, I hate this stage. You go through 3 rounds where you have to knock these rat dudes down the hole, but it's tough as you seem to be the only character that bounces around like a pinball while the bad guys barely move when getting hit. Sometimes I'll finally knock one of them in, and I end up falling in right afterwards.
If you go down the hole.
After we beat it, we're going to go ahead and play the train ride with Hampton. You're on top of a train and you can move around and do a belly thrust to cripple your enemies. Take that! There's some traps here, like the train just randomly disconnecting, and even the end where I thought I beat the level, only to get sucker punched. Son of a bitch! Beat the boss and we got one more stage before we can enter the final level. It's the roller coaster ride with Babs Bunny. In this stage you'll jump, duck, and rotate the platform device to make your way through. The problem is, well, this whole stage is the problem. This level is hard. You're moving pretty damn fast with only split-second decision making. Do you duck? Do you rotate? Can you even rotate quick enough? Apparently I can't. This is the biggest trial and error level by far, and honestly, I don't have time to memorize every little hazard and movements of this level to continue any further. I can't beat the level, and I don't even make it to the final stage. I gotta say, despite this game looking really good, I didn't have any fun with this. Hampton's level actually felt like a stage, but everything else just felt like glorified mini-games.
Well, there's a third Tiny Toon Adventures game for the NES, Tiny Toon Adventures Cartoon Workshop. It's a cartoon maker, and it's a game that I always wanted as a kid because that's what I wanted to do as a kid, make cartoons. And I think it's amazing that this game even exists. It's almost like Spielberg was trying to influence a new generation of animators. I mean, they reference animation enough in the cartoon, but this is a game where I can be the animator now. So let's play!
So, there's no tutorial, it just plops you in. Select a character, select a background, select quotes, sounds, another character if you want. Well, while I do appreciate the things they try to accomplish with this game, this isn't the most exciting title. I mean, it's a cartoon maker on the NES. If you piece a cartoon together properly, you can get something like this. Maybe as a kid I could have really gotten into this more, but as an adult, I just don't see much of a point of spending hours on making clips that end up like this.
So, those are the Tiny Toon Adventure games for the NES. Let's go ahead and move on to the Game Boy. Let's take a look at Tiny Toon Adventures, Bab's Big Break.
Babs wants to be a big star and plans on going to some big unspecified theater. Buster and friends decide to follow her to make sure she gets there safe. And can you guess who the boss at the end is? So you play as Buster Bunny, and at any point in the game, press start and you can select either Plucky or Hampton to play as too. They all play exactly the same except for their move attack. Buster throws carrots in an arc, Plucky spikes bouncy pineapples, and Hampton rolls watermelons. You'll also collect ammo as you play the levels. The stages are pretty straightforward, but you can get some rewards for going out of your way. And you might actually want to keep your eyes open for other Tiny Toon characters because every stage has some obstacle that a specific Tiny Toon helper can get you through. For example, you might need Dizzy Devil to get past a mountain, Fifi to kill some trees, or Shirley Loon to blast open a door for you. Overall, I actually find this to be my favorite Tiny Toons game so far. The bosses are all great and unique, and the level settings mix it up enough to where it doesn't get stale. There's even a bonus game where you can earn extra lives by racing other Toons. It feels like they try to get as many of the characters in here as possible. This game has just a lot going for it, and the only issue I have is that it has the problems you would expect for a Game Boy title. It's short, a bit on the easy side, and the gameplay feels a tad slow. But I like it, and I enjoyed it all the way through. You do get to play a harder version of the game after beating it, but I never got the appeal of games that get you to replay them literally after finishing them.
But Bab's Big Break is a solid title that any Game Boy fan should check out. Now on to the sequel, Tiny Toon Adventures 2, Montana's Movie Madness.
So the plot of this game is that Montana Max has opened a new movie theater, but the only movies he plays are movies about himself. Buster, being the cheeky bastard that he is, jumps into the films and wants to mess it up. Okay. The movie starts, and I admit, I laughed at the Montana Max MGM parody. Buster jumps into the film, and unlike the last game, you only play as Buster here. The gameplay is a bit different too. Here you can only jump and kick. Again, jump on bad guys to defeat them. Kicking enemies can stun them and very rarely kill certain enemies. If you press down, then either left or right, you can run too, which is mostly useful for doing big jumps. I gotta say, this game is pretty freaking hard. The levels can be unforgiving and some of them seem to go on for way too long. The Samurai movie level, for example, just felt like it was never gonna end. There's multiple stages within the levels and there's lots of cheap tricks that'll get you. There's one super cheap area in the future movie level where the game takes a page out of Battletoad's book and adds a speeding rocket racer level. God damn it! The good parts about the game though is that the bosses actually have some challenge and are all pretty different. The music in this game is good too. Each level plays the Tiny Toons theme songs, but it matches it with the theme of the level. There's also bonus levels between stages, but I could take it or leave it. Overall, I definitely enjoyed Bab's Big Break over this, but I do appreciate how this game, as well as all the others, at least tries to make each entry in this series different from one another.
Well, that's it for the Game Boy titles. Let's go ahead and move on to the Sega Genesis, starting with Tiny Toon Adventures, Acme All-Stars.
So this is a sports title starring all our favorite little Tiny Toons. There's several sports to pick, with the main ones being basketball and soccer. You can select your teams out of the 12 playable Toons, all with their own fancy name logo, and you play. I don't really play soccer or basketball video games, so I'm not sure if this is good or not. From what I played though, there's not much here to keep me invested. There are more games here though, like bowling, which is meh. There's also an obstacle course, which doesn't play very well, and there's also a whack-a-mole game where you have to compete with 3 other players to hammer Max's head. It's one giant cluster of animations going on at once. Maybe I'm not the right guy to review this type of game, but from what I played, I didn't care for it. I thought it would have been cool if there was a baseball game on here, but as is, nah.
Now let's go ahead and move on to the next Tiny Toon Adventures game that most people would have played on the system. I'm talking about Tiny Toon Adventures Buster's Hidden Treasure.
So the plot here is, you can probably guess, Montana Max is being a dick with his money and has captured Buster's friends, and now we have to stop him. Upon replaying this here, I realized something. This game is pretty similar to a Sonic the Hedgehog title. I mean, it's a Sega Genesis game about a speedy blue animal rescuing his animal friends from a human mad scientist, and he has to travel through forest and caves while jumping on springs, avoiding spikes, and you'll also occasionally play on a trippy looking bonus level. Yeah, it's coincidental, but it's pretty amazing nonetheless. And you know what? Who cares? Because this game is actually pretty damn fun. So you play as Buster, and you run, and jump, and occasionally wall jump all around these stages. You also go bopping bad guys on the head, collecting carrots, and discovering the many secrets throughout the levels. Find Go-Go Dodo towards the end of a stage to move on to the next. Sometimes if you search hard enough, you'll even find a secret Go-Go that'll take you to a secret stage. You'll go through several types of worlds, and after every few stages you'll get a boss fight, mostly with the character Dr. Gene Splicer, who's mind-controlling fellow Tiny Toons. The levels themselves can offer quite the challenge. Sometimes there's mazes or tough obstacles to overcome. Sometimes the game can get pretty difficult, but it's completely fair. It offers a variety of levels, and it doesn't really feel dull at any point. And it's actually a longer game too, so big that the developers made a whole overworld map to hop around. This game now takes the cake for being the best Tiny Toons game so far. The only downside to me is the fact that you can't save your game progress. The game is 32 levels long, so it would be nice to save rather than using the long-ass password system. But other than that, the game looks great, sounds great, and plays great. It actually feels like if you combined a Sonic game with a good old 90s Disney platformer. It's just a fantastic addition to any Sega Genesis collection.
And with that said, we'll move away from the Sega Genesis and onto the Super Nintendo, and we're going to start talking about Tiny Toon Adventures Wacky Sports Challenge. This game is also on the Game Boy, but we're going to go ahead and skip that since we're already talking about the big, meaty console version.
So when I popped in this game, I was kind of expecting a Super Nintendo version of the previously talked about Acme All-Stars, but it's actually completely different. In this title, Montana Max is holding a sports festival with a $1 million grand prize. All the Tiny Toons, well, actually just Buster, Babs, Dizzy, and Plucky, won in. Pick your character and you'll compete against the rest in a variety of challenges, including ice cream tossing, disc throwing, weightlifting, obstacle courses, and even a game of chicken on the edge of a cliff. One minigame I found interesting, mostly because of visuals, is the hang gliding. That's amazing looking! Once you beat the first round of games, you'll move on to another set, with some games repeating, but also at a higher difficulty. Playing through the game by myself, I really wasn't having that much fun. It's a Mario Party style game that should be played with friends. Hell, it's one of the few Super Nintendo games that actually supports the SNES multi-tap. Though playing party games like this solo just doesn't do much for me. Multiplayer is where the fun is at, but really with the right friends, any game can be fun.
Alright, so we got one more game to talk about. For the 9th and final game we'll be looking at, this is Tiny Toon Adventures Buster Bust Loose.
So in this game we control, who would have guessed it, Buster Bunny. And he's on a mission to, actually, this game doesn't really have a solid plot. Each level is kind of like its own unrelated story. Even the game manual doesn't explain why we do what we do in the game, but anyway, the gameplay is a bit different here, and it actually threw me off. Press the B button to jump, and press X or Y to do a flipping drop kick. This is one of the few ways to kill an enemy. If you try doing the jump on the head technique, you'll only hurt yourself. Pressing the L or R button will cause you to dash quickly until your dash meter is depleted. While dashing though, Buster is so fast he can actually climb walls. Neat! So you'll run and jump your way through 6 levels. The first level is through Acme University, where you kinda learn the ropes. The second one has us in the Old West. We'll jump rope, ride around on a train, fight a magician? Okay. And we'll even beat up a train. The third level is in Spook Mansion. Ooh. The fourth level has us playing football, and you actually have to pick between running and passing as you try to avoid getting tackled while trying to make a touchdown. Very unique. The fifth level has us jumping around on balloons and bubbles, and we'll even be inside a giant pinball machine. And the sixth and final level is the Space Opera, which is like a Star Wars parody. Overall, I like this game, and it's really fun. Not being able to jump on enemies took a while to get used to though. The attack button is unique, but sometimes it's easy to abuse. And like the other games, they try to work as much of the Tiny Toon characters in here as much as possible. After every stage, we'll play a bonus game. Spin a wheel, and whoever it lands on, you'll play a bonus level starring that character. None of the bonus levels are that exciting, but it's a nice breakup in gameplay. With all this said, this game is fantastic!
In fact, out of all the Tiny Toon games I've played today, if I had to pick my favorite, it'd be either Tiny Toon Adventures Buster's Hidden Treasure or Buster Bust Loose. Both games are really great for their own reasons, and you can't really go wrong with either. And with that said, that's all of Konami's Tiny Toon Adventure games.
Back in those early 8-bit and 16-bit days, Konami was really at their peak, so it's no surprise that these games are the way they are. Even though I didn't like every game, it's hard to deny the effort put into all of them. All the games play so differently from each other, with many different ideas and game mechanics. It's an amazing feat. Every title looks so great too. I mean, look at Tiny Toons for the NES. Buster looks great here. Now, in comparison, look how they slaughtered Bugs Bunny's look in the Birthday Blowout. All the characters are easily recognizable and look like they do in the cartoon. Even the Game Boy games look great. And even though every game's soundtrack consisted mostly of the Tiny Toons theme song, remixed in so many different ways and styles, I didn't really get sick of hearing it, surprisingly. Konami did an amazing job. I also appreciate how packed these games are with the Tiny Toons lore. Every game tries to fit in as many of the characters from the show as they can. Also, most of the games have bonus levels, which throughout the 9 titles, all of them were completely different from each other. It's just amazing. Again, I don't think every game held up, but even the ones I didn't care for, I didn't feel were bad, just not for me. I can't speak for any of the games that came out after these ones, as I haven't played them, and without Konami developing them, maybe I don't want to, but the games here you can tell were crafted with love and interesting ideas. Thanks Konami for making them a part of us older gamers' childhoods.
But those are just my opinions. What do you guys think? What do you think of Tiny Toon Adventures? You like the game? You like the cartoon? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. If you want, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. I thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.